Hey everyone, welcome to the lesson. In this one, we're going to take a closer look at the solo from the studio version of Limb by Limb. I heard from a few people who thought that this is one of Trey's best studio solos, and I definitely agree with that. There's so many different really cool things going on in it. There's some awesome rhythmic things happening, some really cool arpeggios that are based around chord shapes. There's just a little bit of everything going on in this, and I think it deserves its own breakdown. So what I thought we would do here is do a pass through of the solo at about 50% tempo. I've got my slow downer ready to go, because even if you go to play to the lesson that I did last week, or if you're watching this later, the limb by limb lesson that I did, even if you play it with the slowdowner on YouTube, sometimes it gets out of sync a little bit, and it's kind of tough to tell what's going on. So I figured I'd just play it slowly right here, and then after that pass through at about 50%, I'll do another one at 75% just to kind of amp it up a little bit so you can track your progress if you're trying to learn this whole thing. And then finally, I'm going to look at a couple choice spots in it and just give some thoughts on how we could maybe take these things that Trey's doing and make them our own and implement them in our own playing, and especially our own improv. The very beginning of the solo starts with this little run where we're like, okay, now even though that's this mostly linear kind of moving line, this little melody that moves in a one-dimensional way, I would try to connect that also with the chords being played, maybe not necessarily the exact chords being played at the moment by the other band members, but how you can picture it as the soloist. So when we go up to this 13th fret of B, it's connected to an F chord here. So, you know, a lot of us probably know this, you know, this shape down here for an F chord. We're just using one note out of that. Now, I know that might seem like kind of a silly point to make, but if you're soloing, you can also visualize those other notes in that that chord. You know, you can even connect it to like a bar chord shape and think of the notes that are in that shape. And that's kind of like, again, that's what Trey is such a master of. He's so good at that, and moving fluently between inversions, different voicings, all kinds of stuff. Okay, now that kind of explains the first little bit of it. You've got that run in there. That one right there, let me play that a little slower, because it's kind of, I think it's the standout lick of that first little section. So I'm going to kind of pause it right there. One thing I've really noticed through transcribing quite a few of Trey's, not only songs in general, but solos, is that he seems to really like to start phrases rhythmically on like the and of 4 or the of 4, so like on offbeats. So just food for thought with that. You know, maybe just think about when you play a solo and what's the first beat that you tend to play your first note on. There is something satisfying about just going 1, you know, on 1, just ripping a big bend or something. I definitely get that, but sometimes it's cool to kind of wait for it. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of create this movement that maybe wasn't there before. So that sticks out to me with that lick. I just wanted to bring that up. And then speaking of rhythms, the next part that leads into, I think, is the hardest part of the entire solo. I mean, beyond a couple of the parts are really fast, and so you just have to practice that a lot and get used to that. But the part where he's just kind of hanging on one note, that part I definitely wanted to talk about. When I was in high school, I took a jazz improv class. One really cool thing the teacher talked about was he had us do this exercise where everybody had to take turns playing a guitar solo, but you were only allowed to play one note. And that was a pretty tough exercise in some ways. For one thing, what it forced you to do is to map out where the note is you're looking for all over your fretboard, because even if you play the same note but do it on a different string, you get a different effect. It just sounds a little different. So it'll train you to know your fretboard better if you practice that. And then it forces you to think more rhythmically, I think. More percussively. And I think that's what's going on here. He's taking one note. I mean, toward the end of that little section, he mixes in, you know, he throws in some other notes, and toward the end of it starts to get a little busy with it. But for the bulk of that couple measure run, it's just an A. So what I'm going to do now is play that section with the mostly one note, and explain it a little bit in case you are trying to play this solo note for note. This is one of the only times during one of these playthroughs in the videos I do that I had to actually watch music as I was doing it, because I just couldn't for the life of me memorize that pattern. I'm usually okay at memorizing stuff, but that really challenged me. So I'm going to be reading some music here as I go. So I'm going to come right in on this A, and I'm going to be counting like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So feeling this in triplets. Now you could say the song's in 4/4 or whatever, but Trey's parts are really felt more to me in 6/8. So that's just how I was thinking of it, splitting it up into triplets. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then it does this this other lick that kind of ends that whole thing. Now, part of the reason that I wanted to count that out like that was to show that it isn't just some random thing that he's doing there, like off beat or not in time. It really comes out to these really precise rhythmic patterns. Now, I don't know how much he pre-planned that or anything, but it is fascinating to analyze it after the fact. It is this really particular rhythm. So now I thought we could take a look at the part where the chord change happens, and it's this really huge sound, and it really builds up the whole thing to this big climax, and I think it's just incredible. It's probably my favorite part of the whole thing. So we're going to start 2 measures before the chord change, so we're still in that F Mixolydian kind of vamp, and we're going to start on 10th fret of G to do the run-in to the chord change. Now, I want to pause real quick before doing the next thing. All that really happened there, I don't mean to minimize it, but if we really simplify, what's happening is we're just outlining a D flat chord, and then when he goes to this change here, he's hitting a G, which is the major third of an E flat, which is the next chord. So this shows again the value of knowing what the chord tones are for the changes happening, because you can hit a note and it can just sound like the perfect note at the perfect time, which I think is what a lot of us are going for. So let me pick back up on 14 of the B string. Now we do this cool kind of bluesy lick. Now, this is a perfect example of how you can kind of have the best of both worlds. You can have a chord shape that you're playing off of, and then you can have a scale that you connect it to. In this case, the way I would hear that is it's kind of a mixture of Mixolydian and then Dorian, and it kind of just goes back and forth between the two. What happens here is we start with this kind of little bluesy thing. Now that note there, that's bending down from the 7 to the major 6. That is kind of a, now it could be, you think of it as Dorian, or it could be thought of as like an F13 chord as well. The only reason I make the distinction of saying Mixolydian and Dorian is because later in the thing we go, and that's like, well, that's just the blues scale, but then when you add in that we've had that major 6, it feels pretty Dorian. So let me do the whole run again here. And maybe the greatest thing about that is that he plays the major third a couple times with an A right here, and then he hits an A flat right here. And it's a good reminder that we don't have to be locked in to one thing. We don't have to be locked, because really what's happening, if you mix between Dorian and Mixolydian, you're really changing keys, and you're overlaying keys and playing in multiple keys at the same time. I think that's what the blues really is about in a lot of ways, and this is a really bluesy lick. So the way I would think of this is that we've got kind of like an F7 shape. You've got that shape, and then you've got the blues scale, the pentatonic, and you throw that little tritone in there. It's just a great sound. So that's something fun to play around with, is trying to map out like F Mixolydian kind of chords, or F7 chords, and then hitting the Dorian stuff in there as well. Having both the major and the minor in the toolbox is a good way to go. So now moving along here, we end up going back to the D flat chord, and let me just play that really slowly here again. So now we just slide up, and we're going to do the same kind of chord shape. We don't hit on all the notes. We don't actually go to the pinky finger here. We're going to go and that's the best. When he hits that A up there, it's so satisfying. That A is the major third of F, which feels like the home chord. Even though we're never really in the key of F, you know, that F Mixolydian still, it draws all the gravity to it. The F majorness of it feels like home. That run again. And then we just kind of come back to that almost like bluesy thing. And then you're right back to that bluesy kind of sound that we were talking about a second ago, and he does this little lick. And then I love this little now that ending part, this is another thing to think about. When he's doing this little what that's coming from is, even though it looks completely different, it's coming from this same arpeggio that we did a second ago. It's kind of just a C chord shape. If you play an open C chord like this, that's more or less what's happening, but we're doing it up here, and we can't use the open string, so the fingering has to be a little different. But now the end lick, it doesn't quite look like that because he's just taking the upper structure of the chord. So we can take little pieces of these things and really get a lot out of them. And just by him doing that and playing it at the higher part of the chord, it's a little more climactic. It's really, it raises the energy a little bit. I think sometimes when we hear the pitch go higher and higher, it builds up the intensity, and it just makes it sound really huge. And that's what's happening here. So the way I would count that end part would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you just hold it until you go down to the F at the very end. So let me just hit that last little lick again from the rest. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is where we come in. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then that's the end. So thanks again for watching the video. I hope you got something out of it. Please don't hesitate if you have any questions to leave a comment below, and I'll try to answer it as quickly as I can. Other than that, I'll see you soon. Thanks.